Okay, well, it's 1:30, so we're going to go ahead and get started. Welcome, thank you for being here at the session today. As you know, it's a topic of workplace bullying awareness, and the training is really at an awareness level. It's a material to really share with you based upon a survey that was conducted by Staff Alliance about 2 years ago now on work-life at university. And in that survey, there were a number of comments that were made that indicated kind of perception by employees that workplace bullying or bullying behaviors were being experienced in the workplace. And so because of that, President Gamble asked that Human Resources create some training and offer that for our employees. And so we're going to do that today. And of course, after today's session, if you do have questions, we'll give you some resources and people you can contact to get more information. I do want to mention that the session is being recorded. And so the purpose of that is for an employee or employees who are unable to get into a session because of their schedules, student employees, or those who are faculty members who are interested in attending the training or getting the information. We are recording this, so just as an FYI. Okay, well, why don't we go ahead and get started. In some meetings, we do like to have a safety moment or a safety minute, and I guess this particular topic is actually the safety minute because workplace bullying can be distracting and cause employees to not feel safe. The awareness or the information that you'll get today will help empower you or enable you to find solutions or resources to help you address situations where you feel that you're being bullied. Okay. So first of all, let's see, can you see the slide in Fairbanks? Oh, what happened to ours here? Oh, here we go. So this first slide, this first slide is just showing you a little bit of context for our purpose in putting this into a continuum. I call it continuum of behavior, individual as well as organizational behavior. So on the far left there, it's all the way from appreciating diversity in individuals, the differences in individuals, to the next stage of affirmative action where employers have an obligation to ensure that their workplace reflects the diversity or the differences in the community and the workforce that's available in the community that we recruit from. It also includes things like promotion and training and so forth, but in essence, that represents the way that we are expected to behave or treat applicants and how we are recruiting individuals. That next circle, if you will, is the civility or collegiality. You probably hear that more so in the academic departments, but it's really about how we behave toward each other in a civil way or how collegial we are with our coworkers or colleagues. And there in the middle is dealing with difficult people or situations, and so then also how we get into maybe difficult or challenging situations with customers, co-workers, how we start to see behavior erode a bit, and how we respond or react to that, to bullying in that next area of the continuum. And that's what we'll be talking about today, because the behavior at that point starts to escalate or really degrade. And so we'll talk a little bit more about that, as well as we move toward the far right and the red area of EEO discriminatory actions, where the laws prohibit illegal discrimination or treatment of individuals based upon specific protected reasons by law, all the way to workplace violence. And so behavior in workplace violence scenarios, as you probably read about in higher education, on campus, or in workplaces, very serious. I mean, it causes loss of life. It causes individuals to be put into prison, so incarceration. But in essence, it's just very severe when you get to the right. So as you can see, the behavior or conduct by employees and employers, and what is expected by employers and what we how we respond varies depending on this continuum. Any one of these circles could actually be a 2 to 4, 8-hour class easily. But what we're going to do is, again, just talk about bullying from an awareness level. And so what we'll be doing today, mainly talking about 4 topics. One, the definition of workplace bullying, what it is and is not. The expectations the university has in the way of employee conduct as far as bullying and our behaviors and how we can respond and who we can contact, what your rights and responsibilities are as an employee, and again, fourthly, who you can contact and what resources you have available to you. So first of all, how's the sound, I should ask, on that side? Can you hear us all right? Is it too loud? I can turn our volume down.
We can hear you. The picture keeps kicking in and out for some reason, though.
Okay. We hear a lot of sound, a loud, I'm not sure if it's paper or what that is, but just as an FYI, that I don't know if that's going to cause us to be able to send sound that direction or not. But
Hey Ann, this is Ken. What they could do in 109, they could actually go and mute the microphone. That way there won't be these sounds coming in and affecting the conference.
Okay.
You're right.
Well, but then I won't be able to hear their comments. We won't be able to hear them. So Eric, if you can't figure that out, don't worry about it.
Ooh, snap.
Okay, well, I'm going to proceed, if you don't mind. So the definition of workplace bullying is about having repeated activities or actions that are unreasonable, and it could be initiated by an individual or a group toward another individual, another employee, or a group of employees that results in intimidating, degrading, humiliating, or undermining behavior, and that creates a risk to the health and safety of employees. And so we have pulled this definition based on some of the information that you'll find. I do want to say that this is not illegal under the laws that are currently in place. In fact, there are a lot of movements and things that are taking place around the nation that are trying to pass laws about workplace bullying. And the reason why they're coming across such pushback or controversy on this is that people believe it's a gray area. And as we start to talk about this a little bit, you'll see exactly why it is so gray. Okay, so we're getting more people on this end. I don't know if you are, if you can think about this, interested in polling, and if you are, I'll participate as well. And so we'll have 5 people participating in polling. But anyway, we'll move forward. So some examples of bullying, just to put a little bit of clarity into it, and it's still not really clear. So you may have some questions, and Eric Seastead, our Chief HR Officer, is here to help answer some of those questions for us. But some examples of bullying is, if someone is criticizing you, it's unwarranted or invalid, it's not really justified as to those criticisms. It's being treated differently than others. It's, can vary from excessive monitoring, unreasonable expectations. It could be micromanaging, watching over your shoulder, looking at a number of emails that maybe are associated with your project. It's really about being given unreasonable or unrealistic deadlines. This is probably really common. People know about it. If you're being sworn at, there's profanity in the shouting or yelling at you, if you are being humiliated or even excluded or isolated from others. If you have a work assignment, you're not given the tools, the resources, the people who you need to interact with. Those are examples of possible bullying. And we say that because, as I mentioned earlier, there's no strict, clear definition, and even when there are laws passed, generally it's by case law, that they figure out how to define a particular term, so in this case, bullying. Now, I will say, Fairbanks, if you have any questions or you want me to stop, just feel free to, wave your hand or flag me. So we talked about workplace bullying and what it is. So what is workplace bullying not? It's not about a difficult personality, a coworker who's difficult to work with, or a manager who's demanding or tough, or has high standards, because as long as they're respectful or fair, they're really promoting high job performance results, and they're maintaining a safe working environment, that is not necessarily bullying in the workplace. Okay? And a lot of people do worry about that. Employers worry about that, and that's why some of the arguments come up about passing laws on workplace bullying, is they believe that when employers are having and stating what their expectations are for job performance, that employees will then feel that they're being micromanaged or bullied. And again, that's where the argument or the discussions are occurring. Now, bullying is different from illegal harassment and illegal discrimination. Those laws indicate that different treatment based upon factors that are in our Board of Regents policy, but also based upon federal or state or municipal ordinance or laws. And some of the examples are provided here in this slide. So I won't go through all of these, but I do want to mention sexual orientation is listed there at the bottom of the right side column. And it's not specifically identified as a protected class in law, in state, federal law, but it is included in our Board of Regents policy. And so because of that, the group of people who put the material together for this class wanted to make sure we pulled that out and identified that to the groups that we're training. So how does bullying occur? Well, it occurs in different ways. As I mentioned earlier, it could be from one to many or many to one, supervisor to non-supervisor. That is the primary way that bullying occurs. And you'll see stats, and the way they define supervisor might vary depending on the studies, but you'll see as high as 78% when they're identifying it. But they also, in some studies, say if someone's their direct supervisor or someone's in a higher rank than the person, but not necessarily the direct supervisor. But I guess the point to make there is typically it's the supervisor to non-supervisor relationship that in studies they'll find people saying the bully is mainly their supervisor. But it can also happen coworker to coworker, so peer. And the other one that's not necessarily mentioned up here is that you can have, and there's a 10% result in one of the surveys by the Workplace Bullying Institute that showed that people from the subordinate of the direct report bullying the manager, 10%. So 1 out of 10 cases would involve a direct report bullying their manager. Anyway, thought that was kind of interesting. Staff to faculty, when we went to the Staff Alliance to take a look at the material, they wanted us to specifically mention that because we are an academic institution. That is definitely what you'll see in the material about academic and higher education, some of the bullying that's occurring in the situations. I mentioned mobbing a group of employees who are bullying one individual. That's the term that's used, again, mostly in the academic setting, where in departments perhaps there's a number of people, faculty, who might be targeting one other faculty member. So that's called mobbing. And the thought there is that supervisors, once they are noticed, should take care of that right away, because that's extremely detrimental to productivity in a workplace. Bullying can occur in many different ways. Verbally or in writing. I mentioned email. It could be phone mail. It could be little sticky notes, multiple sticky notes that people get, or red lines in their draft product. It could be just, again, different ways that it comes across. It could be, again, repeated conduct that's threatening, humiliating, or intimidating. The nonverbal gestures, you can imagine, someone who's just pointing their finger in someone's face, or in some of the cases that we're hearing of people, pounding their fist, or on the table pounding their fist, or throwing things, just again non-verbally, but it could still be just as effective in delivering a message that's intimidating. So, how do you feel about that? Would you like to try a poll, or do you want to not?
Just asking opinions?
Just asking opinions. And I'll participate too, so there's 5 of us, at least on this end. If any of you have a cell phone that you'd like to try the poll, you can do that. I'll give you some instructions. And let me explain a little bit about what it is as I pull one for myself. And you'll see how this works, and you can join at any time. But what this is, if you haven't, and I see that probably, are there some students? Are there some students in Fairbanks? Any students? Okay. So you may have already experienced this, thank you, have experienced these in the classroom where there's a question that goes up on the slide, and what will happen is, my little laser doesn't work on this, but the clickers, once you answer the question, the response wirelessly comes into the computer here, and it all comes together, gets summarized, and then I can show you the end result at the end. Okay, and so I'm going to just show you the next slide, because if you do have a cell phone and you want to participate, all you have to do is go to the rwpoll.com website, and you put in the session ID number, or the UAWBA, which is UA Workplace Bullying Awareness. And then what will happen is your result will come in anonymously into my computer. So you can give it a try. Let's just do this, and then if you decide that you want to forego it, just kind of flag me. Okay. Okay, here we go. So today is a beautiful day, and this is just an example. I'm going to just test it and see if this is clear enough. So press A, B, or C. Okay, and you can always change your answers at any time, but once I close it, so you can see right here, from this group, 60% said, yes, absolutely, it's a beautiful day. No opinion yet, 40%. Okay. So the no opinion yet, maybe we haven't gotten outside yet to really see, or we don't have an opinion about whether it is or not. So the next question is this. Have you experienced workplace bullying during your career? Now, not just at the university, I said during your career. So yes, possibly, unsure, or no. Okay, here we go. So the group, you can see. Oh, how did that happen? That might actually do, well, maybe that'll answer our question for us, because this poll is not showing up. Okay, well, that's answered our question for us. What I'm going to say is this. I'm not sure why that happened, but just so that you know, generally here, when the group responds, we've had a variety of responses, but for the most part, we've had a very high return that, yes, people have experienced at some point during their career. Very small percentages have said unsure or no. Although I will say the unsure did come back as a result, mainly because they weren't sure of the definition of bullying. But I'll show you this next slide. The Workplace Bullying Institute actually did a survey, and what they indicated in the survey results is that about 35% of respondents indicated that they have been bullied at work. And so that represents about 53 million people, or about 5 different states on the West Coast, the population of those 5 states. That tells you quite a number of people have experienced bullying, and this is the argument or the information that's being shared at the legislative levels of different states to try to pass bullying laws. bullying can increase with significant organizational changes, whether it's because of restructuring, technological changes, because of budget cuts, new leadership. It could be a variety of reasons when organizations change, when they merge, they acquire new organizations, different cultures clash. So that's when incidents of bullying can increase. Because of the inadequate information flow between organizational levels, there's a gap maybe in the information. People think that they've communicated information, but they haven't done so. Maybe some assumptions that are being made, and people just are not actually doing what they think that they are being expected to do. That's where the clarity of roles and responsibilities about job descriptions or position descriptions. We talk about goals, expectations in performance reviews or appraisals. That's where the clarity of the conversation is really necessary. If there's a lack of published policies about behavior and conduct, then really that also contributes to increased bullying incidents in an organization. And some of you might remember, if you were here a few years back, when the university was talking about passing some conduct, clarification on conduct and expectations, and that's actually resurfacing again. So some of the governance groups are looking at that and trying to figure out how to clarify what the conduct expectations are for university employees. So now that we've talked about the definition and how it occurs and examples of what that might look like, let's talk a little bit about the university's expectations. All right, so the policy for the university and the Board of Regents policy indicates that for corrective actions, that there are some expectations that the supervisor may correct or take corrective action if there's an inability to work effectively with others, if there's fighting on the job, if there are any acts by employees that endanger others, or again, just harassment or misconduct. So I know employees, and you might hear this, people say, well, there's no bullying specifically identified in the policy or the regulations. Well, in actuality, there's some guidance here for us on how we're expected to conduct ourselves and what actions supervisors may take. So the next slide you'll see in your handout is that regarding discrimination, when I spoke with some of the directors of Office of Equal Opportunity and Diversity, as to how and what they would look at when situations are brought to their attention. And yes, the discrimination policy specifically talks about that which is prohibited and illegal based upon state or federal law. Again, any discrimination that creates an intimidating, hostile, offensive working or learning environment or that interferes with an individual's performance will not be tolerated by the university. So this specifically is referencing illegal discrimination. But what you'll see in the next paragraph there is while it makes and wants to say that we're making, if it makes distinctions based on an individual's legally protected status, or, and this is where I think the focus is really, that if there's some other distinction on a basis other than an individual's qualifications, abilities, and performance, that's when the university considers individuals being treated adversely or differently. And so the focus here again is an individual's qualifications, abilities, and performance. If something else is being looked at as the reason for differential treatment or poor treatment, then that is not prohibited, or that's not acceptable. It would be prohibited. Okay, so just as a recap, we've talked about what bullying is. It's about repeated activity or actions by an individual or group that's directed to another individual or group of people, that's intimidating, degrading, humiliating, or undermining, and that which creates a risk to the health or safety of an employee. It really is viewed as a misuse of power or authority, but it is not about a manager who's respectful or is fair or is demanding high performance, as long as it's being done safely. Okay? And again, we talked about this not really being about illegal discrimination or harassment based upon protected classes in the federal or state law. So let me try this one more time. Let's see here. So during your career, have you witnessed workplace bullying of someone else? If this doesn't work, we'll just drop the polling. So during your career, have you witnessed workplace bullying of someone else? Yeah, I'm not sure what's going on here, because normally the poll would show up here. And again, this was another area where we had a significantly higher return in people who had witnessed bullying of others compared to that which was provided in the results of the survey. And so I'm going to just share with you what the workplace bullying survey indicated. We're not going to worry about this one here, but the survey by the Workplace Bullying Institute in 2007 and 2010, some of their key findings were that, as I mentioned, 35 to 37% of people had reported being bullied. 62% of the bullies are men. 58% of the targets are women. So when I said 62% of bullies are men, the other 38% being women, when women are the bullies, their target are women 80% of the time. I mentioned that the stereotype of the bully boss was confirmed in the survey. They said 72% of the bosses were allegedly the bully. There's some additional survey results, but I thought those were some of the key findings that they had. There's a whole list of questions that they've asked as far as how bullying impacts the workplace. Some of the survey and the research that's done indicates that bullying impacts the workplace by decreased morale, increased absences, illnesses by employees, so they reportedly call in sick, low creativity, innovation in the workplace, low again, morale as we saw, but then that leads to turnover. And once you have turnover in employees where they leave because they feel that they have no control or the work environment is not a healthy one to be in, then what you find as an employer is that it costs between 100 to 200% of that person's salary to replace them. So it's very costly for employers. So why does it occur? Well, the reason bullying continues is that people let them. If you think about it, sometimes if you've observed it in a workplace, the boss or someone else rationalize it. They say, well, that's just the way, Daddy is. That's just the way Anne is. Or in this case, we'll talk about, maybe a supervisor, high performer. They bring in lots of money. They produce lots of results. If the employee then complains about a coworker or the other person, the bully, then sometimes the focus also is brought back to the person who's complaining about the bully. And then both the target and the bully get blamed. Sometimes the perception is that there's no consequence for the bully's conduct. What you will see in our new performance appraisal form is that there is a factor on conduct. So under character, there's a factor that's defined as respectful, patient, tolerant, understanding, maintain self-control. That's the definition of what we're looking for in conduct. That they avoid behavior, both verbal and physical, which may require corrective action, but they act in ways that build respect. So what we're trying to do is we talk about consequences, that yes, in this new performance appraisal process, there will be consequences for the bully's conduct. But bullying also continues because people perceive that the person is in a position of authority or power. The other reason bullying continues is that you're also seeing studies on neuroscience, how the brain works, and that the bully is sometimes getting something out of their conduct. They get some enjoyment out of it. They get a rush, and you probably see that some people really like to have debates or to disagree, and some people actually get pleasure out of the pain, is what they're finding. So in the short term, a bully may get some results, but in the long term, really what you're going to see as a supervisor is that there's going to be increased turnover. You're going to see employees who are unhappy. You'll see dysfunctional areas. And so, unfortunately, like I said, sometimes people don't bring the concerns forward because they perceive that there's just nothing going to happen or be done. So let's just talk about rights and responsibilities. What should you do as well, and what do we want employees to do? So you have a right to work in an environment that's safe. You have a right to raise concerns and file a complaint, bring that forward without fear of retaliation. You also have a responsibility to understand the Board of Regents policy and university regulations. And we'll give you some names of people who you can contact, but to use those staff to maybe role play or ask questions, just to ensure good judgment and act professionally. So you say, hey, one of the people in here is Julie Shalboy. Julie, I wanted to respond, or I did respond this way. Do you think that's the right way to respond, or how do you think I should approach the situation? If you do know of someone who's being bullied or is feeling like they're being bullied, notify those who have a need to know. We don't want to be talking about it with a lot of other coworkers who can't do anything about it, but really notify those who have a need to know. And if there's an investigation, cooperate with the investigation process, share information. And some people feel like with an investigation, I don't want to get somebody, so-and-so in trouble. I don't want to get Anne in trouble. But really, you're not getting someone in trouble. You're being asked to share information that you saw, that you heard, just to share factual information. So you want to respond truthfully, accurately, and bottom line, just maintain self-control at all times. You want people to be professional at work, and so those are some of the expectations. If you yourself experience or witness bullying, what can you do? Well, first of all, don't laugh at the questionable comments or jokes, because what happens for the person who's making those comments or jokes is that they believe it's acceptable. And so it gives the impression that no one's offended, or it gives the impression that that's acceptable. In fact, in some cases, if you're comfortable with it, not everybody is, but you can let the person know you don't appreciate the conduct. If needed, sometimes we don't have good memory, so notating the event, the date, the time, is basically the who, what, where, when, why, how kinds of things. And then report the conduct immediately to an authorized person, and you'll see, and you have that in your handout, who the authorized people are. So, as I mentioned, your supervisor, if your supervisor is the one who's actually the bully, or you believe is bullying you, then it's really your supervisor's supervisor. That's who you want to contact. That's who the authorized person is. If you're not comfortable with that person, then you can go to the statewide Office of Human Resources or Labor and Employee Relations. And the campuses also have an Office of Equal Opportunity. So the university decided when we first put this training together, and this went through a variety of people, including the General Counsel's Office, Human Resources, the campus Human Resource Directors, the OEO Directors, Staff Governance. We, at this point, decided that you could contact any of these, or go through any of these avenues, or contact any of the people. Someone said, well, maybe we should just have one person. And the thought there was, sometimes people are not comfortable with that person or that office. And so you have a variety, currently, a variety of options to use. Okay, so what would you do? How would you want to approach the bully if you decide to approach the bully? Well, first of all, be prepared. And even though we're going through these steps, you're not required to go this by approaching the bully, because not everybody's comfortable going right up to the person who's allegedly bullying them. But if you do, be prepared. Have your list of things you want to do or what you want to say. Be clear about what you're going to say and how you're going to say it. The way I would describe that is, what's your objective? What are you trying to accomplish when you plan to go talk to this bully? How are you going to open the conversation? At what point? Because you should presume that that conversation might go south. It might not work very well. Think about not only how you're going to say things, but how you're going to transition out of the conversation. If it starts to escalate, at what point will you say, okay, maybe this wasn't a really good time. Maybe we can get together a different time, or I can share my information with you in a different way. So just be prepared, really be clear. And this is not just in a situation where you're feeling bullied, but this would apply in almost any situation where you need a conversation with someone and what you're trying to accomplish. A quiet, reasonable, business-like tone is the most effective. Recognize at some point if it starts to escalate, and for any of us, we're human, if the other person starts to yell or to get irate, it's almost easy to respond in a light way or a light manner, to start getting louder too. But at some point, you can say, okay, I got to figure out how to get out of this situation. If you plan it, that's something that you already have in mind. If you're a supervisor, and I'm not sure if anyone is, but I'll just cover this because if you are in a situation where you take it to your supervisor, these are the things that we've been sharing with them as well on how to respond. So not to ignore the bullying complaint, to make sure and address and resolve the situation promptly. So take it and do some things timely. Take the claim seriously. Don't try to justify or prejudge, oh, that's just the way Anne is, or that's just the way Betty is, or that's the way John is. Notify the employee of the appropriate contact, who to report the bullying to. So if I'm the supervisor, I just need to make sure my employee knows who they can contact. And what I'd suggest is that the supervisor follow up with the contact, and I would say, I don't need to know the details. I just want to make sure that my employee had a chance to contact you and you had a chance to talk. I referred the person, I just want to make sure that you had a chance to connect. As a supervisor, we need to maintain confidentiality regarding the complaint. Only discuss it with those who have a need to know. People have a right to bring concern forward without people perceiving that they're a troublemaker or that they're not accurate in what they're sharing. Employees have a right to bring those concerns forward. We also suggest supervisor make no promises. So if you're the employee going to the manager, just be aware the supervisor cannot promise to you that they're not going to do anything. And some people say that. Even a coworker might say to you, I'm going to tell you about this, but I really don't want you to tell anybody else. Well, really, there are no promises or guarantees, because really if there's something that's illegal or is inappropriate happening, the manager in this case has an obligation to take action, and for the supervisor to follow up with the employee. Now, if you're the bully, if you've ever been accused of doing something inappropriate or treating people rudely or poorly, what we indicate to that individual is to know and realize that the university considers it serious, as a serious matter. Excuse me, and that the university does have an impartial investigation process. We do ask for people to maintain some level of confidentiality, and consider this. If you're the person who's being bullied, or bullying, and the bullied employee is telling someone else, you might feel that your reputation is being compromised. But at the same time, if you're the one who's the bully and you're telling other people, I can't believe Anne is accusing me of being a bully. Well, now I'm, what recourse do I have? I'm starting to share information with people. So the suggestion here is that even the bully maintain some level of confidentiality, that they cooperate with the investigation, and that they respond truthfully and accurately. We recommend that managers or others, in this case the bully, that we not try to find out who's bringing the complaint forward, because that in and of itself could be perceived as a step toward being retaliatory. False statements or the refusal to participate in the investigation can result in negative consequences. And in many different environments, a failure to cooperate actually does cause or can result in adverse decisions or actions. Most times people want to participate and give their side of the story. Now, retaliation is a totally different topic that I know people are fearful of bringing concerns forward, but it's very important for you to know, and the President Gamble was in one of the sessions and really wanted us to make sure that employees knew that this was his, what he called go, no-go decision. He felt that this was extremely important for employees to have the ability to bring concerns forward, but retaliation is prohibited, meaning that if you bring a concern forward and because of that you believe that there's adverse actions or negative actions occurring because of that, then it is something that the university will take action on, will look into it. But that retaliation, if it is allegedly occurring, what you want to do is bring that to the authorized people's attention. What we ask supervisors to do is, before taking any negative employment action, that they consult with the HR office, the OEL office, the Office of Equal Opportunity, or even the General Counsel's office. I mentioned this about trying to determine who brought a concern forward. The other thing about retaliation is that even when the person who's bringing the complaint forward has done that and the claim is not supported, meaning there's no evidence to indicate that, does not give the bully the right to retaliate against the person who brought the concern forward. And so even if there's no evidence of the bullying, the retaliation claim could be supported, meaning you still could find that someone retaliated against someone. One of the conversations that we had in a prior class is that sometimes it's kind of a human reaction. You say, I'm just offended that someone would allege that I bullied them. That's insulting, and I find that offensive. Well, the thing to be aware of is that, yes, that might be a human reaction and a response to the individual, but that still doesn't permit it or make it right. And it is easier to prove retaliation than it is in actually an original or initial discrimination or bullying complaint. So we talked about bullying not being illegal. It's not illegal based upon laws that are in place right now, but there are legal implications. And so imagine a scenario where there's a boss, Brenda Boss, who's repeatedly yelling at Emma employee in department meetings, in the hallway, on the phone. Well, that could be a claim of intentional infliction of emotional distress. So Brenda Boss is also talking with others who don't have a need-to-know information about Emma's job performance. Well, now Emma might be claiming potential defamation of her reputation. So Emma is also claiming that she's suffering from a psychiatric injury because of her boss's behavior. Now that could then result in a workers' comp claim as well as a need for family medical leave by Emma employee. And then after complaining, Brenda Boss changes Emma employee's working conditions, her hours, her assignments. Oh, she doesn't need to go to training. She spends so much time documenting things. How is she getting any work done? Those could be claims of retaliation. And if Emma employee no longer can sleep well, she has stomach ailments, or she's taking antidepressants, now that can affect again her health, her safety, and could be considered intentional infliction of emotional distress. And finally, when she feels that she has no recourse or no choice, but she must resign, then that could be a claim of constructive discharge. And what that means is that the working conditions are so intolerable that a reasonable person feels compelled to resign. Now I know people wanted to hear a little bit more about specifics. I mean, bullying that's happening in the workplace. They wanted to know more about some things that are happening in Alaska or things that happen in higher education. So I'm going to share with you this scenario here where Kevin Morrissey was the managing editor of the Virginia Quarterly Review, and he actually was a friend of Ted Genoways, or they were at least very, very comfortable in their relationship, because Ted Genoways knew Kevin Morrissey from when they worked together a year or two prior in Minnesota. And when Ted Genoways became the editor of the Virginia Quarterly Review, he brought Kevin Morrissey to work with them at the University of Virginia. And during the course of their working together, and Ted Genoways was one of those high chargers. I mean, he was able to get things done, and he brought the Virginia Quarterly into higher standing as far as the publication. And Kevin Morrissey, while they were initially on very, very good terms, over a course of time, became someone who Ted Genoways just felt was not really performing to the expectations of his right-hand person. And so he brought in Ted Genoways, someone else who happened to be an individual who had donated a large sum of money to the University of Virginia. And so people questioned his bringing in a 24-year-old female donor, and her family had given quite a bit of money reportedly to the University of Virginia. In any event, because Kevin Morrissey was questioning some of the decisions by Ted Genoways, their relationship degraded, basically. It became worse over a period of time. When Ted Genoways finally sent an email to Kevin Morrissey and told him not to come into work because he had heard that there were some things that were happening, some conversations that were occurring there in the workplace. So I'm going to share with you this YouTube about where this went, and it kind of results in a multi-million-dollar lawsuit by the family of Kevin Morrissey. But let's see if I can have this come up for you, and if you can see it in...
Back now at 7:43. Back now at 7:43 with what one family is calling a deadly case of workplace bullying. The editor of a Virginia magazine is now under investigation by university officials for allegedly driving one of his employees to suicide. NBC's Jeff Rawson is here with details on that. Jeff, good morning.
Hi, Matt. Good morning. If you've ever had a bully for a boss, you know how stressful it can be. But at this office in Virginia, coworkers say their boss was so mean, so toxic, that employee actually killed himself just to escape. He'd gone to human resources and other officials more than a dozen times for help, but his boss remained on the job. Inside this small Virginia office, Kevin Morrissey was reaching his breaking point, dealing with a boss who coworkers say taunted him endlessly. Kevin worked for a campus magazine at the University of Virginia called VQR, Virginia Quarterly Review. Kevin's sister told us he lived for his job and ended up dying for it.
He was really good at his job, and no one should have to choose between a bully boss and being unemployed.
That bully boss, as she put it, is Ted Genoways, the magazine's senior editor. Coworkers say Genoways harassed Kevin, blaming him for almost everything, even suspending Kevin for a week in mid-July without ever giving a reason, just to mess with him, one coworker told us.
Was it toxic?
It was a toxic environment for Kevin, absolutely.
Waldo Jakewith is the magazine's web editor.
Ted's treatment of Kevin in the last 2 weeks of his life was just egregious, and it just ate Kevin up.
Then, on the morning of July 30th, a final blow. Genoways sent Kevin this email, criticizing his work again. Kevin Morrissey received this email from his boss at 9:47 a.m. By 11:30, less than 2 hours later, he had come here to this coal tower near campus. Kevin called 911 to report a shooting. That's when he pulled out a gun, pulled the trigger, and killed himself.
It was just like, I can't take it anymore. You know, it's just the last straw.
While he battled with clinical depression, in his suicide note, Kevin blamed his boss, Ted Genoways, for driving him over the edge. "I can't bear things anymore," he wrote. In his apartment, friends found the book he was reading, Working with the Self-Absorbed, How to Handle Narcissistic Personalities on the Job. But they say the most disturbing of all was his latest phone bill obtained by NBC News, showing Kevin made 17 calls to university offices in the week leading up to his death.
And what did they do for him?
Nothing. They said a lot of really great things, but no action ever resulted.
University officials confirmed they set up meetings, but Genoways remained in his position. In an email to the staff, Genoways defended himself and blamed Kevin. His work suffered and his demeanor, to my mind, was often unacceptable for the workplace. "I cannot accept the final blame he laid on me." Genoways declined to speak with us on camera, but his lawyer did. You've heard the accusations. Was your client a workplace bully?
Ted Genoways was not a workplace bully.
Does Ted take any responsibility for this?
When Kevin Morrissey committed suicide, it was some combination of unhappiness at work and his own long-standing clinical depression.
But for Kevin's family, if Genoways wasn't the cause, he was, in their words, the final straw.
With ongoing daily assaults and you're already depressed, how tough is that?
The University of Virginia admits no wrongdoing here, but they have launched a full internal investigation into Kevin's death, the workplace environment at the magazine, and allegations, Matt, that they did not act fast enough when Kevin reached out for help.
All right, Jeff, thank you very much. Nicole Williams is a career and workplace expert. Nicole, good morning to you.
Good morning, Matt.
Let's say right off the bat, the university needs to conduct an investigation. I'm going to let that happen.
Yes.
I'm not going to jump to any conclusions. What does jump out at me, though, is the number of phone calls that were made by Kevin to university officials in the days or weeks leading up to this.
Yeah, no, and you know what's so funny, Matt, is bullying is rampant. There's no question about it. And because it's not illegal, right? It's not considered harassment unless the individual being bullied is under protected status and the person who's actually doing the bullying is not part of that protected status
Right.
group. So a lot of times this goes on, people complain repeatedly, and officials do not respond appropriately.
But I mean, if there are repeated complaints, clearly it's a he said, she said situation, or in this case, he said, but does the university need to at least separate these two while they're conducting a further investigation?
Yes, you'd think so. Yes, Matt, absolutely. The way that this is dealt with, and of course we're going to learn more as time goes on, sounds as if this was a very, tragic case that was not handled well. But, it is true. There's bullying going on without question. I think that this is a great opportunity for us to reflect on why is bullying so rampant and how are we going to deal with it.
What is bullying? I mean, what defines workplace bullying? You can be a tough boss without being a bully in the workplace. So what's the difference?
Yeah, it's repeated, Matt, and it's very, it's all about undermining someone. It is about, and this is the problem with bullying, is sometimes it's very covert. It's very passive-aggressive. It's gossiping about people. It's not letting them into important meetings. It's treating them meanly and poorly, but you're right, it's tough. What's the difference between the tough boss and
Kevin
someone
Morrissey
who's
also had a history of clinical depression, and that may have influenced the way that officials viewed this. They may have thought this was something more in line with his depression and less in line with what was going on in the workplace.
Absolutely.
Again, we don't know, but there's an investigation
And
underway.
it's so chicken and egg, Matt, because, inevitably you're bullied at work. You are going to be depressed. At what point is the bullying responsible for his depression and obviously his, unfortunate suicide? This is a really interesting case and definitely is going to bring light to there's, healthy workplace bill that's out and about. And certainly this is going to definitely bring some interest to this kind of topic. Yes.
Nicole Williams. Nicole, thanks.
Okay, so as you can see, we talked earlier that sometimes when the action comes or the complaint comes from the person who's allegedly being bullied, the focus also goes on the person. In this case, they thought that he had, because of the depression that he experienced, that may have been part of the reason that led to the suicide versus the bullying. And who knows? I mean, that's part of what will be figured out. But for purposes of what they also talk about Kevin Morrissey is, as a young adult, he was a high school track star or an athlete. So there'll be people coming on both sides. Again, this is higher education. People do talk about higher education having more of a environment that could tend to lead to bullying because of the variety of education, the variety of people from very little education to people with multiple PhD and doctorates in different areas. Because of that, it could lend itself to an environment of bullying. Okay, so another occurrence or event in Alaska, in this case, is something that was brought forward or brought to light against the National Education Association. And it's a union that represents public teachers and educators. And in this case, Thomas Harvey, who is the interim assistant executive director, was allegedly bullying at least three staff members in this particular case that was raised to the Equal Employment Opportunity Commission. And his behavior, allegedly, involved yelling and screaming. He would be in close proximity, within inches from people, and he actually had physical contact where he might grab someone's shoulders or might push them away. He allegedly, again, lunged across the table at people or pumped his fist. They perceived him as intimidating, and to the point where one person actually called the police department to file a complaint. So in this case, where he supposedly got so close to one person that the person said they could feel his saliva and spit on their face, and that's how they described it. And that there was this fear that physical safety, that he might physically attack them. So what happened here in this case, while initially the case was dismissed, it was appealed and it went to the Ninth Circuit in California. They reopened it and wanted that to be investigated further. So there's a number of details in there about behavior and conduct, so that if people want to know a little bit more about what crosses the line to inappropriate behavior, you could actually take a look at some of these cases and see what people are considering as crossing the line. In this case, they ended up settling the case. It was public information, but $750,000 between the three individuals. This is kind of an interesting one because Julie Bend is actually the spouse of one of the people who worked for the university at one time, labor relations, here in Anchorage, John Bend. I'm not sure if you remember him at the University Lake building. I remember having conversations about this because it was a very traumatic event. And for those who might have experienced bullying or family members who do, what you will find is that when people claim that it is a violation of safety standards or safety laws, this is actually starting to be addressed in those areas. The National Institute of Occupational Safety, Health and Health are actually starting to talk a little bit more about this. Also in the respect of the 9/11, the incidents with the Twin Towers, when you think about that, people went to work thinking that they're going to work, and this act of terrorism and workplace violence also then happens in the workplace. And so there was a commission that created a task force of employers, from people from different industries coming together to talk about not just workplace violence, but what leads up to it, which is then the bullying behaviors. So this one was close to home, but again, you're starting to see more cases and incidents of workplace bullying. So things to keep in mind, people who are bullied are usually very confident in their jobs. They're not ones that are the cause of the bullying, and that's usually the stigma that comes with people who are bullied. They feel that if they bring something forward, that people will think that they're weak, that they might have been subject to it because they deserved it, but that's not the case at all. It might be that they just didn't fit in with the rest of the group for whatever reason, but they are not the cause of the bullying behaviors, or shouldn't be feeling that they deserve it. Sometimes people think that this is the case, that it's just a conflict of personalities, that that's just the way someone is, but that's not the case, and so we don't want to dismiss that if our coworkers or someone brings that to our attention. We really want to treat employees and each other fairly with respect. We want to make sure that we look into a matter if it's brought to our attention or if we observe it or witness it. We do want to encourage our coworkers to do the same, because once we start doing the training and once people start knowing what the definition of bullying is, the philosophy or theory is that the people who are doing the bullying are less likely to continue with that behavior because they know they're being watched. At the same time, someone was asking, well, aren't you creating a culture of people telling on each other or reporting things? Well, that's not the focus. The focus really is about respectful behavior and conduct. And if we can do a better job of explaining what the expectations are, we're hoping that people know we value their concerns, we value their input. We want to make sure that it's a productive work environment. That's the focus. So these are the contacts here at the university. Statewide Human Resources, it's Michelle. Labor and Employer Relation, Rhonda Ooms. I mentioned Julie Shalboy's name. She's also someone we can contact. Rhonda Ooms, at the time we created this, was the person that we wanted to maintain as the point of contact. So you have her information in your materials. There are 3 different OEO directors or Office of Diversity as well. So you have the information for UAA, UAF, and UAS. So you can refer people if you happen to talk with someone from those campuses. You have some resources that are here as well that you can refer to. One of the materials or handouts that we looked at when we formulated the material came from the Department of Labor and Standards, National Institute Standards at the Washington State Labor Department. And so there's a link here as well as some information that you can take a look at. There's some books in our Skillsoft resources. And these are the people who've been at the training in the past, Rhonda Ooms, or this particular Michael O'Brien, from the General Counsel's Office, probably has been to 95% of the bullying awareness training to answer questions. He is not able to be with us today, and so Eric graciously agreed to be here. So I'll just see, does anyone have any questions? You can think about that. Eric, is there anything you want to say that you'd like to share with people as they're thinking of their questions?
Here, let's say the microphone's on now.
Yeah, we can hear you.
Well, that's a good thing. I don't have any speeches to make. I just want to reiterate what Anne was saying, is that basically we're trying to help you do your jobs better, and we don't expect that you need to do them in an environment where you're feeling intimidated, where you think people are picking on you. It's not to say that some of your jobs aren't going to be hard and difficult and stressful at times, but again, we want it to be hard and difficult and stressful because the job is hard and stressful and difficult, not because your supervisor is hard and stressful and difficult and being mean and things like that. Okay, so we do have expectations for supervisors as well. You will see probably in the next couple of weeks, we're rolling out a confidential hotline that is designed primarily for fraud investigations and things like that. But because we believe in maintaining a safe, healthy environment for our employees too, it's also, if you feel that you're being bullied and you don't want to go talk to anybody else, you can anonymously and confidentially report it using this hotline 24 hours a day. It's not called a bullying hotline because, again, it's, any kind of misconduct or wrongdoing that you think is being perpetrated. We want to know about it, and we do believe that bullying falls in that category. So we hope that if you have any questions or concerns, that you'll use the hotline, that you'll go to your supervisor, if it is in fact your supervisor that's doing it, that you'll go to someone else, because again, it's not something that we expect that you need to put up with. Okay, and we will take action to make sure that it stops. Okay, so are there any questions, comments that people want to make? You don't have to raise your hand and say, I think my boss is a bully. You don't do that. Okay?
questions here.
Well, I was just going to, he answered on the last part of that sentence, but you said in the beginning that bullying is not illegal, but I just want to know what the university's official stand is on it, and maybe that's what you were saying in your last sentence, is that the university's stand is that they will do something about it to stop it, right? Is that what the university's saying?
Yeah, that is correct. I think if you go back to one of those previous slides that Anne showed at the beginning related to policies of the institution, there's one called corrective action, and it lists things that we think are important that we don't want to tolerate that do result in corrective action. Down the road, yeah, it's on there. There you go. Basically, these are things that could result in disciplinary action, and it's kind of open-ended here in terms of harassment, other misconduct. This is how seriously the university system believes in this. They are in the process right now of changing this policy. This is a policy that has to be approved by the Board of Regents. You know what they're changing in this policy? They're adding the word bullying to that list of things. Inability to work effectively, fighting on the job, endangering, da-da-da-da. The word bullying is actually being inserted into this policy because we feel that strongly about it. So when you read it down the road, and I'm sure you read the board policies on a regular basis, down the road you will see the word bullying entered as an addition to this policy. But until that time, we do believe, and so does our general counsel, that bullying is incorporated in the language of this particular thing, and we will take corrective action. And corrective action can be anything from retraining to, notes in people's files, depending on, the level of what they've done. It could be disciplinary action, including termination, depending on the nature of it. Obviously, whenever possible, we like to correct behaviors rather than just punish them. So we will be working on that as a mechanism. Because sometimes people don't know that they're bullies. Sometimes they have no idea. Sometimes they don't know any other way to interact. I mean, if you think about it, where have you learned to be an employee? Or where has your supervisor learned to be a supervisor? Right? So sometimes we just don't have the best role models for those kinds of behaviors. So we as a university system want to make sure that people do have the proper role models, and if that requires retraining and revisiting what they do and how they do it, we'll do that. Okay? We're not going to say, oh, you get bullied, that person gets fired. It doesn't work that way. Okay? But we will correct it, though. That I do want to guarantee for you, that we will correct it.
I think it's important for what I'm liking in all of this is that there just the awareness and an opportunity for anonymous reporting. I mean, during the time I've been here, I could have written some of that dialogue in that thing because I've seen it, and if you have somebody that you just witnessed is being bullied, but they're not doing anything about it because they're afraid of retaliation, they got all these kids to feed, they don't want to lose their jobs, so they don't address it, they just keep trying to handle it, and you're witnessing it. Well, you as a witness, you feel like, I can't do anything about reporting it either, because what if that is the outcome? How am I going to feel about that? So nothing ever happens until, the person has a breakdown or, gets desperately tries to find another job. I don't know. I think I'm glad it's being addressed because I think it's out there more than we want to admit. And I think people need an opportunity, a safe ways to try and deal with it.
Yes. Thank you for those comments, because, that's actually why this is coming up even on a national level, is the perception that it is affecting people's physical and mental safety and status. And so there is a perception that it is causing individuals to feel ill, to experience low self-esteem. There are claims of intentional infliction of emotional distress. So that's where the claims under the safety laws are actually coming up. And so this topic is coming up to that area as well.
Yeah, I mean, even here at the university, I've seen employees who left work in tears almost on a daily basis, but in other areas of their life, healthy. So it wasn't a final straw. It was the thing that was, hurting them mentally and even physically when you're taking it home daily.
We talked about doing some training where there are some role plays or skill development. In this particular situation, the university administration wanted us to get the awareness level information out very quickly. If you were here in the fall, you probably remember. We did multiple sessions and we trained 300 employees plus at statewide, and we're trying to create a situation where we can capture even more people over time. And thanks to Eric and Kara Ekman in trying to figure out how we can record these sessions. That's what we are definitely trying to do.
I think it's great. So thank you. I think I can even notice a difference already in the atmosphere in the office that I work in.
Great.
Because of the awareness that, I can't do that. I need to handle this differently.
Thank you for sharing. The
whole idea with this is to let people know that, as an employee, you have rights, you have responsibilities, but you're also empowered to make a difference in your work environment. You're not just helpless drones that have to put up with stuff just because we get thrown a paycheck at you. Okay? The whole idea is to stand up, take a stand. Even again, as you mentioned, even if it's not you that's being bullied, if you're seeing someone else being bullied, there are now mechanisms for you to be able to report that, and we strongly encourage you to do so.
Any other questions? So I want to just mention, because people probably remember this, or if you didn't, you can look this up later, but I mentioned earlier about sometimes there's a stigma, people feel ashamed or embarrassed if they've been in a situation where they've been bullied or intimidated or humiliated. They didn't respond because they didn't know what to do. But if you remember last fall when the football harassment and bullying was being discussed, the Miami Dolphins, the football incident between Jonathan Martin and Richie Incognito. These are football players. People perceive them as very tough, that they can, withstand ribbing, the kidding, the hitting, the pushing, whatever that might be. But even when that surfaced, that actually brought another light to it, which is that co-workers, these football players, will make comments to each other, will make statements to the degree that someone else just cannot stand it any longer. In that case, Jonathan Martin had to leave. He left the Miami Dolphins, a place that he wanted to be to play. But he came forward to explain what was happening, the comments that were being made. And so the point being there is that, someone, it doesn't matter who you are, it does occur, and it can happen to someone who's a 300-plus pound football player, and they still feel hurt or feel embarrassed or humiliated. And so it can happen to anyone. Don't feel like you're in a bad situation and can't bring it forward. And we can help you, some of the people there, give you some tools to decide which route you want to go and how you want to address it. But we do want to know it at the university because we do want to take care of it because it shouldn't occur in our workplace. Anything else, Eric, or any other questions?
No, just again, thank you for coming and paying attention and all those good things, and I'll thank you in advance for letting us know if you feel you're being bullied or if someone else is being bullied. I'll appreciate that when we, hopefully you won't see it. Obviously in perfect work environment it'll never happen, but sometimes it does, and the sooner we can correct it, the sooner the problem goes away.
And we want to thank our Staff Alliance for the survey, sharing the results, and if you participated by responding to the survey, thank you very much for your time for doing that. Again, brought your input into the room, allowed the president and others at the university to have the opportunity to respond or address it. So thank you all very much.
Yep, absolutely. Thank you again.